Name is Thomas Emmett. I am the Vice President and Education Officer for the European Historic Houses Next Generation. So I sit on the board, and you are very welcome to our first 2026 webinar on the Inside. We do a quarterly Inside Next Gen webinar series, and you're very welcome to our first one, which is on historic gardens. So we're joined by two fantastic speakers today, Ursula Cholmeley and then Isabella Streeter. So Ursula is a board member for Historic Houses UK and is living in Easton, and Izzy or Isabella Streeter is the next generation coming along in the future in the fact that she is marrying Monty, who is Ursula's son. So I'm going to hand over to the two speakers. Don't forget to, if you have questions, you can put them into the Q&A box as the presentations go on. So we'll have the two presentations and then a Q&A session. So yep, I will hand over to you, Ursula.
Right, Izzy, do you want to introduce me and explain that you're in NextGen, and then I'll talk about what I've done for the gardens.
Yeah, of course. So Monty's mum, Ursula, Lady Cholmeley, is part of the HH committee. And so obviously if you have any questions as well regarding how to start your garden from scratch, or if you have any garden related questions, she's amazing. She's taught me everything that I know so far. So definitely worth asking. She came to the family and started the gardens about 30 years ago, and now we're sort of looking at the new and improved Easton Walled Gardens, and she'll talk to you a little bit about that. So we'll look through the gardens from the 1880s, how she came in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and where it's at now.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Yes, I have been doing this project for a really long time, and I started to restore the gardens when I was 28. We went from next gen to gen very quickly because Fred is my husband, and his father died when he was very young. So he inherited before he was 30. So what he inherited was an estate that had been clobbered by the 20th century. So there was there's been a Cholmeley here since 1592. So that means that Monty and Isabella's generation are the 14th generation to grow up at Easton. And you can see from this slide here that there was a very big house here by the end of the 19th century. And when, to give you some idea of what it was like, the future president of the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt, visited here several times because his family were friends of the Cholmeley family. And he described the house and grounds as a dream of nirvana, almost too good to be true. And it is one of the reasons we decided to restore the gardens, is it is in a very beautiful valley. And he describes fishing in the river, and he came here with his wife Eleanor for part of their honeymoon. And while he was here, Eleanor noticed, he already had a roving eye even by that stage, noticed that he quite liked one of the Cholmeley daughters. And so that was the end of the friendship after that. So he never visited the house again. During the First World War, it was used as a hospital for soldiers who were recovering from the trenches. And then during the Second World War, it was requisitioned by the army, and the Airborne Division were based here. And they were extremely wild young men, and they were 19. And they let rounds off in the house, and they threw grenades into the greenhouses. And so in 1951, Fred's grandfather, Hugh, made the heartbreaking decision for him to pull the house down. And for the next 50 years, so from 1951 to 2001, it just fell further and further into disrepair until it looked like, have you got a picture here? So you could just put up, show them. So you can see here what it looked like by 2000. The bottom right-hand picture is particularly poignant, and it shows the state of all the buildings. And I think we had about 5 years left before it would have been too late to save the site, because some of the walls started falling down in a major way about 5 years into the project. But by then we had some momentum, so we were carrying on. And so you can imagine Fred was new to the property and he was new to running it. So I said to him, do you think we could look at restoring the gardens? And his polite, let's go for the polite reaction, was, no, I don't think that's a very good idea. I kind of ignored him and just started with my mum, and we started pulling out elder. You can see the top left-hand picture here, the bridge, covered in elder and thistles. And the two of us just started clearing the bridge because it was a bit that seemed to be finite. We went into the river to see if we could find bits of the balustrading that had fallen into the river. Sorry, got a dachshund up here. And we've been really working on it ever since. And we now welcome 15,000 to 20,000 visitors a year. And we have a cafe, 3 shops, and holiday accommodation around the site. But it's taken 25 years. I would say the first 10 years, it didn't seem to be really any progress at all. I didn't feel like that. And then it really took until now to suddenly feel that everything's really come together. And it's a great opportunity for us to have the next generation helping us out with that. So you can see here, what does he show is, you can see here some of the buildings that we've renovated for holiday lets for people to come and stay in. The top left-hand one shows the corner of the gardens. That's the old head gardener's cottage. And the bottom left-hand one was completely derelict. The roof had collapsed, and we've just put an extension onto that building to make it big enough to get a holiday let in. None of these buildings are really suitable to let to families because they're just not big enough. So it's a perfect way to use the buildings, and it gives visitors an opportunity to walk in the gardens after visiting hours. And 2 of our things that we're really famous for, you can see top right there, is our sweet pea collection. We focused on sweet peas very much, and snowdrops in the spring. They were there when we first started with snowdrops, and we've really just bulked them up so that they're everywhere now. So that we've just had our snowdrop season, and they look like snow on the ground. It's a beautiful way to start the year, is to come for a walk around the gardens and see all these snowdrops. It's such a pleasure to welcome people back after the winter. And also it's extraordinary how much wildlife we've brought into this valley that wasn't here before. So it's not always a great financial success, but the businesses within the gardens are financially sound, but the gardens itself, it does take up so much money that it's practically impossible to make it do more than try and break even. But there is this benefit that we are now living in this beautiful valley with so much more wildlife, scents, sounds, flowers. It's just a privilege to be part of it, really. And I think that's pretty much was. Anything else you'd like me to add is before?
Maybe you could talk about how you started the garden from complete scratch, and you've created these zones that have sort of found their own story.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because we had pictures from Country Life magazine from about 100 years before, so that we could see something of what the gardens used to look like, and where the hedges were, where they put the borders. And over time, over the 400 years of gardening, we rather assumed that people had worked out the best places to put things. So we tended to put back what was already there. But I have created new gardens within it, and we're just working on one to celebrate our 25th anniversary. And that's going to be near that gatehouse that you can see just there. It's everything that you see was just covered in elder and trees and scrub. There was really no garden to speak of at all, and thank goodness reviews and TripAdvisors didn't exist when I was doing it, because it was a question of people taking it on trust when they came on a tour or visit to the gardens, that it was going to be worth seeing it now, because when it came to it being like it is today, they have those people who came early have the added benefit of remembering what it was like, and that makes their visit even more special when they come.
Amazing, thank you. So I will sort of go into how I've come into the family and the roles that I play now. So very early on, when I started dating Monty, Ursi and Fred were extremely welcoming to me, and I was very keen to learn about the gardening and everything that Monty does. And so they put me on the social media team, which I thought was probably the best place for me to start, because I really took an amazing opportunity to learn about when things flower, what's going on in the gardens. It gave me the background of what actually goes on here. And Ursi essentially breathed life into the gardens. And I think the next stage that Monty and I talk about is bringing community to the gardens, because at the moment, as Ursi said, we have two major events, which is the snowdrop season and the sweet pea season, but that only happens for a short time in each season. And we wanted to bring in a community that was constantly coming in to see every season. We would have very slow Marches, very slow Augusts. And so I thought, how can we bring community in, and the community that we want? So currently we have this amazing community that Ursi and Fred have built over the years, which are the over 70s, which we find that they spend a lot more money, even though there are fewer that come in. It's really beneficial to us. And so I thought, okay, well, if I want to target a new demographic, which we call ABC1, which is the middle upper class, I thought about introducing events and workshops and creating a sort of community of people that are artistically minded. So Monty obviously has started his artist materials, and we want to turn the community into this artist retreat, plein air paintings, people doing yoga in the gardens, but also we want the events to be very low maintenance, and they basically run themselves. Ursi and Fred have done, which I'm very beneficial. I'm very happy for this, but they've done every event under the sun, and it means that I can go to them and I can say, oh, I have this idea, and they say, well, we've tried that. And I'm so not disheartened by that, because it means that I have this amazing opportunity to do things that could work, rather than, and it's been trial and tested before, whether it does or doesn't. So what we've come up with is these events that are really low risk, and they happen in the gardens anyway. And people love to experience the countryside. They love to experience gardening firsthand. And so we looked at the gardens and we thought, okay, what are the gardeners doing that we can take away from them? So, for example, we have rose pruning workshops and we have apple picking workshops, where gardeners would normally spend 2 or 3 days picking up all the apples or pruning all the roses. We handed it over to the public, where we give them a pair of secateurs. We teach them everything there is to know, but it essentially takes a job away from a gardener, and it seemed to be working quite well. And so we started doing these tree tours. So Monty takes a group of people around the parkland, which is normally closed off, to talk about the spring, summer, autumn trees, and that's gone really well. We do yoga in the gardens. We have one person who will come in and have their class, and they do it once every other week. And it's so low effort, but it's stuff that we truly think bring in that new community and fresh community that are, one, willing to learn and want to educate themselves, two, immerse themselves in the garden all year round, and three, give the gardeners a day off, which I think is quite handy. We also, Mont and I have looked at it and thought, what would we want to do? What are we passionate about? And how can we educate the community ourselves? And so you can see there's a Dachshund picture up there. We love dogs, and so on the quieter months we allow dogs to come in on Sundays, and it just means that not only can you come in but your pets can come in, and then that brings a new community of people. We have a Dachshund Day as well in August, so if any of you have Dachshunds, please come. I obviously do block printing workshops. Monty does watercolor workshops, and then the workshops are designed to then get people in the shop. So if people are coming in and doing a let's say a bulb planting workshop, we make sure that that day or that season that we're doing that, there is a stall or a stand specifically for marketing bulb planting elements, because we make sure they come in, they can. And I suppose the most beneficial events are ones where they come in, they order themselves a coffee, they have a bite to eat, they then go into their workshop, and then they go into the shop and spend some money. And that is well rounded, but also they're constantly coming back. And that's where we kind of think that it's a successful event, because snowdrop season, you have to wait a year for all those people to come back. Whereas a yoga and the gardens, that's the same person could be coming for 6 months and they tell their friends. And so it's sort of, it's been really inspiring to see the fact that people are actually taking to this, but it doesn't happen without marketing. And so I'm so glad I started with the social media, because it's one thing having all these lovely events, but if you're not telling anybody about it, it goes on flat ears. So we've sort of spent time on the marketing and make sure that we're sending out press releases for everything. The website is constantly updated. The most important thing I think any business could have is a mailing list, because Instagram could be taken away, Facebook could be taken away, but your mailing list is ironclad. So I think that's where we constantly find people are booking in on our workshops. Then we have so many flyers. We have advertisements going out constantly in local news agents and magazines, and we're keeping ourselves relevant, which I think is super important. Now, when we look at the diary, we have a year. This was last year's important dates. We have a year packed with events, and all of these events, I could honestly say I probably set them up the night before. I have a few calls with the person that's going to run them, or if it's myself, and they run themselves on the day. The team know what's going on, so it's extremely straightforward compared to an event maybe I would have suggested would have been like a market where we have all these sorts of people coming in and filling up the gardens, or a circus, or these big events that take maybe 6 months for one person. We kind of did away with that, because at the end of the day, it's these big, huge events. You could be making 20 grand for each event, but realistically, the time you spend on paying somebody, the time you spent on organizing it, and the day afterwards of like packing it all up, we found wasn't worth it. And so our future plans, Monty and I want to turn it into sort of a village, so to speak. We're so lucky in the fact that we don't have the house, because it means we can invest in the buildings that are around us, and we can turn it into this wellness center where we have potentially could turn it into sort of like the Newt or Soho House, where we have saunas and steams and paddle clubs, and it sort of becomes a community space where not only is it gardens, but we offer lifestyle as well. So yeah, that's all for me. This is examples of the marketing we have. But yes, if there's any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you to both of you. That was fantastic. Fantastic to get a sense of what it looked like when you arrived in 2000, and the amazing work that you've done, and then also looking into the future with the next generation as to what's to come. Do put questions into the chat box. I have a couple myself anyway. I suppose so. With the house and the gardens, how do you balance out public, private? How do do you keep a space for the general public to be coming into that's separate to the house, or how do you measure that, and how do you make it successful in keeping the house private if that's what you are aiming for?
Well, when we started, Thomas, it was a top priority really to take to make sure that we weren't, you didn't open the door in the morning, let the dogs out, and it bites a visitor. So that was our priority, and we were fortunate in a way that because there was nothing here, we could actually say, right, we're going to carve out that as a car park, and this is the access way in. So in fact, we have the thing that we've used the most is iron gates, gate railings, to just say to people, don't go round there. It might not have a gate on it, but they're a very good way of funneling people, to have iron railings in various places. And that seems to keep people away from the village, which is where we actually live, just across from the gatehouse picture that you saw. We were very mindful of that. And of course, the other thing that we've been able to do as we've started from scratch is to make sure that we are it's as easy as possible for people in wheelchairs and things to move around the site, because we've had to consider that all the time. We haven't achieved it everywhere. There's still the odd step, and we're in a valley, so that's quite difficult. But that's another thing that we've been able to do, because we were starting from pretty much ground zero, and creating it as we went, recreating the gardens as we went along.
And how did you pick? So I suppose a lot of us, as we're opening more to the public, are looking at car parks, and then you also look at you look around your beautiful estate and go, well, where can I put where do I put the car park so that it's maybe either making the least amount of damage, or also just not in the way and an eyesore for the rest of everything else? Did it take you a while to work that out?
Yes, it did, because again, we're on this steep slope. So our car park is grass because it's on a steep slope. It's not ideal. We've put a hardcore track down the centre, but then of course when it floods, the water pours down there, so we've had to put a cattle grid in to stop that happening, so that the water goes into the cattle grid instead of into the shop, which is what was happening. It was flooding the shop, and the cars have to park sort of slightly on a slope. I think from experience of talking to other people who've put in car parks, that you can make car parks look lovely with landscaping, soft landscaping, but they can also eat up an enormous amount of money, and it is a balance getting that between the two. Yeah.
Thank you. Izzy, you mentioned Dachshund Day. What will happen on Dachshund Day? Is there a prize for the best dachshund?
They all get prizes,
Okay.
but everyone's a wiener, as we say. So what happens is they all come in, they can buy snacks for the dogs. We were thinking, could we have a sort of Olympics for the dogs? Could we do all of this stuff? But we whittled it down to the fact that the event is the dogs. And so we had about 100 people come in after not having the event for 5 years. We restarted it, and they all just absolutely loved it. We had 2 hours, and there was just dachshunds everywhere, and it was such a spectacle, and it was amazing. But they all came and had coffees and teas afterwards. They did shopping in the shop afterwards. So what would have been a logistical nightmare, we just sort of put a little photo shoot up so that people could tag us. It was kind of a marketing event rather than a money-making event. But what we achieved with that was a lot of dog owners now coming in the months that are usually empty for us, or like quieter, which is really exciting, because now they know that we're here, and people traveled from a very long way away. And so it means that there's a new community of dog lovers that we now have that are coming into the shop, and there's a lot more dachshunds around, that's for sure.
Brilliant, brilliant. There's a question in how many employees do you need for the garden and the organization? And would that change seasonally?
It doesn't. We tried not to make it change seasonally. It's awfully difficult to recruit people seasonally, so we try and work out what they can do. on the shoulder months of the season. And one thing that we do is our sweet pea harvest. So if it's in the shop and it's rather quiet, or in the cafe and it's a bit quiet, the girls or the people who are in there, they will be podding sweet peas, putting them into envelopes, and organizing the sweet pea, because it's something they can just put to one side if someone does come in. So it's a question of really trying to fill each person's role so that there's no capacity left in the team, because as I'm sure is the same across Europe, but we are under intense pressure at the moment. Employing people is very, very expensive. And so we do have the equivalent of 3 full-time gardeners. When we were doing the work early on to the gardens, clearing, chopping down trees, things like that, we used a lot of labour from our farm that we have. But the farm machinery is enormous and it wasn't really suitable, but it was the best we had. So we just got on with what we could. We have about, again, with a cafe, we've had to look at that several times, and that's been pared right back so that one person can run it, so that we don't do chips, we don't do anything really hot. We do sausage rolls, and occasionally we do soup in the winter, but otherwise it's all sandwiches and cake. It's all homemade. It's quite a basic offering, the food, because that's where the expense of the labour is. The shops are set up so that if it's very quiet, one person can keep an eye on all 3 shops. So we didn't really explain, but we have an artist material shop, an iconic stationery shop, and those 2 things, the idea of those is that they bring down a different audience from just visiting the gardens, so there's more of an experience. And we do now have people coming down just to shop and just to have a coffee rather than going around the gardens as well. When they get here, they go, "It's so lovely, I think we will go around the gardens," because they can't quite believe they've sort of, we had a gardener who said it's like turning off the road, and it's like turns into Narnia when you turn off the road. There's sort of hares crossing the road and far too many deer and things like that. So anyway, they love coming down. But if we can keep the shops down to one person on the till when it's very quiet, we can have we've got 3 till bases, but when it's very quiet, we just have one person who's managing really the whole courtyard. And it is key to it is just to keep an eye on, too many hours happening here, too many hours happening there. When we're really busy, we have a pop-up cafe that we can open. So we have 2 cafes that we can open. But again, it's serving a very limited range. We're not saying to people, come here for a delicious meal. We're saying come for the experience. I hope that helps, Anna.
Brilliant, thank you. I suppose are there vegetables in the garden, or a community sort of based aspect to the garden? And then I guess if there isn't currently, is it on your list of things that you'd like to do potentially?
Yes, did you say vegetables? Vegetables and fruits.
Vegetables, yeah.
We do have a greenhouse that has veg throughout the year. To sort of from August onwards, it kind of starts to fill up. I think I would quite like to start having the gardeners be showing workshops as they're doing their jobs. So things, and I think part of it would be sort of growing your own veg. I do like that idea. And so I think anything that the gardeners are doing, I'm like, monetize it. But at the moment, it's too small to sort of give the plants away necessarily to the public. But whenever we have a harvest of pears or apples or anything like that, we tend to sort of give it away in the courtyard. We'll have a sort of display that will, for example, we had pizza night, and we had a big cornucopia basket of all the fruit and veg that we had growing, and then it was all being put on the pizzas as well, which was pretty amazing. But there is a beautiful kitchen garden that Ursula has created, as well as the greenhouses that do tomatoes, cucumbers, basil, onions, there's cabbage. It's all so beautiful, currently being used by the family and for display, really, because I think part of the garden is to show aspirational people what they can do with their gardens. So there's herb gardens and veg patches. But I think I'm so up for educating the community who are willing to be educated. And so I think likewise, I love the fact that I get to come here and learn from the gardeners all the time. And I think if I'm excited, somebody else will be excited. And that means money. So no, I'm joking. That means community building and lovely people who care. And we have so many volunteers. That's another thing. We may have only 3 full-time gardeners, but throughout the busy seasons, people adore the garden so much that they volunteer and they get stuck in as well, which is a huge help for such a big garden.
Brilliant. I guess with the community garden aspect, I guess I meant I think in the UK they're called allotments where people can garden within the garden. Has that ever been a thing that's been thought of, or
Yes, it's a difficult route. That route, I've seen many gardens where they've done it very successfully, but it inevitably depends on the health of the person running the allotment. Whether they or something happens in their family life and they suddenly can't come, and you've suddenly got part of the garden that shouldn't be, for the
Sure.
public, if you see what I mean. It's not up to standard.
Yeah.
But I have also seen greenhouses that people have basically given bits of greenhouses to enthusiastic gardeners, and they've created an incredible geranium collection or an incredible I saw one the other day. It was all different cucumbers, and it was fantastic. It was just so exciting to see somebody's passion that they'd just grown all a load of cucumbers in one end of a greenhouse. So
That's fantastic. Have you made any provisions for natural disaster or extreme weather conditions?
So we have this ridiculously large cattle grid in the middle of the car park, and it is very clunky, and there's big signs saying to people, please don't walk over it, please use the pedestrian side, this is here for flooding. And it does work, but it is a bit worrying that there's this big cattle grid in the middle of the car park, and below it is the disabled car park, and above it is the main car park. So most people have to go round the cattle grid. But if it wasn't there, it does come right down the hill, floods straight into the courtyard and gets into the shop and into the walls and things. So we have made provisions in that way. The bridge that you can see here in this picture, when that river floods, it comes right up to the terraces, and it actually flows around the river. So it comes up to about the 3rd step that you can see there, but it does disappear within 12 hours. It'll have gone. It just leaves a lot of debris on the lawn, and actually people quite like it because they just can't believe what they're seeing. So we rope it all off, say to people, you can't go any further today, I'm really sorry, but they're usually very accepting of that, because they know when they've come through the rain, they know what it's like. So
I thought I might just add 2 other points to that.
Yeah.
Hello, Monty. The other 2 things I can think of, we're in the centre of England, so there's not really such a thing as extreme weather conditions, but wind is a concern, and that is something that you provision for dynamically, meaning that we check the weather forecast, and if the wind is going to be too high, we have to close the gardens. The main reason for that is the trees. So every 18 months, I go around the whole gardens and I look for branches that are likely to fall off the trees, and make sure that they are cut off or the trees are roped off so that no one can go beneath them. And the other natural disaster that is looming is that beavers have been reintroduced to England. They're very protected and they're not predated by anything because we don't have any wolves or lynx. So being in a river valley, if beavers get here, that is it for the gardens, really. They will eat all of the plants and all of the trees. Or at least it's it for the gardens as they stand. But we've talked about between all of us that turning the business towards retreats, wellness, and generally people enjoying being outside as much as being a formal garden means that should that happen, and should the beavers dam the river and start eating things, we could still have a very lovely, slightly more wild garden, and monetize it in a way of long weekends in the countryside rather than day visits to a formal garden. So it's not a true provision, but it's a half plan.
It's funny because my next question was going to be, if you're getting so much flooding, why don't you bring in beavers? But you've answered that one for me.
Yeah, so we're actually doing the work where we're actually, it floods all the way through the park, and
Okay.
we're actually preventing flooding further downstream, which is residential and built up because it floods in our valley. So we're actually doing the work already.
Okay, that's fair. How did you choose flowers and plants, and do you follow a theme or a color palette?
So we're very much dictated by what we can grow. So it's a very traditional English garden palette because we're on limestone soil. So that means it's alkaline, which means that there isn't an awful lot of soil either. So we can grow a lot of wildflowers, and we can grow things like lilacs grow very well with us. Broadly, if a plant comes from China, we'll struggle to grow it. If it comes from California or Southern Europe, it'd probably do very well with us. And we really, roses do well with us because we have a seam of clay that runs through the garden. So it's a practical solution, really, a lot of the time. The other thing is it's a very cold valley because the air is quite still around the valley, and it settles down, and when it gets cold, we have very late frost. Sometimes towards the end of May, we can have a late frost. And so we have to be quite mindful that we can't grow anything too tender as well. So yes, the answer is we do we plant flowers that we know were here from the past? Yeah, absolutely, because we know that they got that right. So we look carefully at the old photographs and say, oh look, they grew that. Let's try that. And sweet peas we know have been grown here for at least 150 years, so they grow very well for us, and they're our sort of signature plant.
Brilliant. And when you arrived in 2001, how long was it between sort of looking at everything to then opening it to the public? And did you start with kind of opening on weekends or within a season to test what audiences wanted, or did you start with like it just being open and then see where it was working?
So it was all escorted tours originally because we had so much. So there was so many. There were dangerous trees, dangerous walls. So everything had to be escorted, and it's a wonderful thing to try and bring local people with you on your journey.
Yeah.
It has so many benefits. So it wasn't really that we were trying to make money initially because it was basically looked like a field with some scrub in it and a few walls around it. It wasn't that. It was really more to say, people would be encouraging. Somebody would say, "Oh, I know a lot. I've got a friend who knows a lot about trees," so then they would come and help us with that. And so that was really sort of, yeah, that was the start of it. Was like that, and then we started opening just for snowdrops for 2 weeks, I think, and then we open one day a week, and then it's hard to go backwards. So it's hard to say, right, we're open 6 days a week. Oh no, actually we're open 2 days a week. It's easier to build up and go
Yeah.
opening more. Yeah.
That makes sense. Um, so there's a question there. Um, if Izzy, if you have a big vision, as in like something that needs a bit of investment for the garden or for an event, are there places that you can seek funding from? And I guess the question is for both of you, but how do you, are there financial supports, or if you're doing a big event, are there places that you can get get local funding or council funding or
Yes, I believe there are some funds that are available for buildings, I believe. We also have an amazing community. I think there was at some point, correct me if I'm wrong, Ursi, but it was because it was a sort of army base. We have a lot of people who want to contribute to the community and the gardens in that way. And so we've done a few corners in honor of that, and a lot of people have funded that, and they've put plaques in, for example, or we've planted a tree in the honor of that. And so we do have that. I think, and I suppose in this climate, it's a bit harder to get funding on projects like this. I'll let Ursi kind of go on about it more, but my idea is to host events with the idea of turning that money into having a big project happen at Easton for the benefit of the community. So I think that, for example, Mont and I are quite keen to sort of re-put up the orangery at some stage. I think that's something that would be really exciting to us. And there is obviously the space for it because the house is no longer there. So it's a big open space. And I think that would be a project that we would love to do. But it does need funding, a lot of funding. So we haven't quite put ourselves into the point where we have the responsibility of looking at that yet. But I know there's lots of projects that go on the estate that Ursula can tell you about, which we have applied for lots of funding and have received.
Great.
Yeah, so we didn't have any funding initially because it's very often much easier to get on and do the job. It's particularly consultants are very expensive, so it's sometimes easier to just by the time the terms of the grant will be so onerous that you've actually spent more money than you would get from the grant. So unless the grant absolutely tallies with what we're trying to do, we tend not to apply for them. That said, the Heritage Lottery Fund in the UK is now funding private heritage up to a certain point. And we've got an old sawmill which has something called a Collie Western roof, which is a very local stone, which we might as well wallpaper it in the most expensive wallpaper you can ever imagine. That's how expensive the stone is. So in order to redo that roof, we will have to get grant funding for that. And that is our current goal is that.
Cool. There's a question in the chat. So do you have any experience with infestations or plant viruses?
We are very scared of various viruses that might arrive. I'm involved with something called the Plant Health Alliance, which is to try and prevent viruses hopping across the channel to the UK. It's sort of successful. We do have ash dieback widely across our area, which is killing the ash trees. But there is signs that some of the ash trees are fighting back against it. We have a thing called the leaf miner moth in the horse chestnuts. And that's a real tragedy because they have these massive great leaves that come out, and then by midsummer they've shriveled up and gone brown because the leaves have been infested by these miners. And we have problems with box moth, but the amount of wildlife in our garden is holding the box moth at bay, so it's eating the caterpillars. So that's really helpful. In the greenhouses and things, we use nematodes and parasitic wasps that you can buy online, and they deliver them every 2 weeks, and you hang the eggs in the greenhouse and they hatch, and then they go around and they eat all the aphids or the red spider mite that's in the greenhouses, and that's super effective.
Brilliant. We have a lot of ash dieback, and there's been a new study that my father told me about where the seeds from the dying ashes, their resistance. So the next generation of ash is going to be fine, but it's just all the existing ash that one has to worry about. But it's a huge thing to be worried about.
It's a huge thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are so many gardens in the UK. What makes Easton really special?
What makes Easton really special? It's privately owned. That's a major thing that I'm sure anybody who's opened their house to the public will appreciate how much the public do appreciate that. It's very unusual. The walled garden is a Tudor walled garden, so that dates back to the 1580s maybe. And most walled gardens in this country were demolished during the landscape movement. That's Capability Brown putting in the parkland. Our parkland wasn't put in until the 19th century when the Tudor garden was fashionable again, so it went round the garden. So that's pretty unusual. I think we just it's a really soppy thing to say, but we're pretty welcoming to people. We do actually really like having people on site, and that is what we get, coming through regularly, as people saying how much they enjoy talking to us, talking to the people behind the till. And and we hope that we deliver what we promise.
Brilliant.
I'd just like to add to that, because Ursula's being a little bit humble, but she's also got this amazing variety of sweet peas that people are completely obsessed with. And she's developed these tins that people can buy, but it's a huge feat to have not only the sweet peas, but she's created her own varieties as well, which I think bring in a lot of plant enthusiasts. As well as the snowdrops, we have so many varieties of that. So we have these people called galanthophiles who come and they are completely obsessed again with those plants. And so the reason why they're so popular and the reason why our gardens are so special is because we take the time to not only showcase these flowers, but really give the public what they want and show them every possible way, but also they can buy them as well. So I think that's quite special. We also have the artist material shop, and the shops that I think are pretty unique to the area. There's not an artist materials for a 100-mile radius, and Monty's done an amazing job of finding a niche in that space, which I think brings in a lot of amazing new people.
Brilliant. Sorry, someone has their hand up. Alessandra?
Yes. First of all, congratulations, because it looks really wonderful. And I really wish to come to visit as soon as possible. And also very much thank you for all the insights and what you've been doing, all the ideas that you gave us. And if, just as a general question, if you were to start from scratch again, what would you do? What would you have done differently? Would you have invested more in, I don't know, hospitality more, or what would you suggest for someone as me who's starting from scratch? Thank you.
What would I have done differently? We've gone. I don't know if I've got it right, but it's taken me 25 years to get to this point, which is a really long time. And so probably I should have been a bit braver a bit early on and just gone to the bank and got some money and really gone for it. But I just couldn't do that. So I've been doing it very, very slowly. So I think that's maybe something that if I'd maybe had corporate experience or something like that, I might have gone a bit faster at it. On the other hand, I think we've set up a lovely platform now that when we do our marketing, I actually, for many years, I did marketing, but I didn't quite believe that we got to where I wanted to be. Whereas now it gives, when I market now, I really believe in our product, and I wish we'd got there a bit sooner, really.
That's fair. Samatina has her hand up. Let's see if I can unmute you. Yeah.
Hi, and congratulations. Wanted to ask you, just for people who are working with their gardens and maybe setting up a new garden, do you have a structure, let's say, where you're reviewing your marketing, you're reviewing the past year? Do you have like a procedure in the year or some procedures which you go by and you would suggest to others? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. We treat it as a small business. So we have a business plan, we have a marketing plan and a marketing strategy. And, occasionally I'll go through the whole lot and then I'll suddenly think, do you know what? I haven't looked at that part of the business for a while. That's what I need to look at. So I've gone from being a gardener really and doing everything from cleaning the loos to, well, actually painting the loos before they even were used. And I've gone from that to really overseeing a lot of the garden activity now. So we will have a meeting every 2 or 3 weeks on a Tuesday morning with all the key players of the team, just to make sure it's really easy for people to get distracted away from what the other half of the team are doing. So it is really important, in fact, that the gardeners know that Monty's got some new pigments in the shop and that Monty knows that at the moment there's yellow flowers out in the garden, because it all informs what you tell the visitor and how they experience the site. And so we do have regular meetings like that. I'm just trying to think what else we do. I think that's yeah, that's pretty much it.
I add to that in terms of the marketing side of things. So when we sit down for our marketing meetings, we tend to have long lead press releases and short lead press releases. So whenever we know something is definitely going to be happening in the gardens, we send it out to local news. We send it out to all of the websites that will do free listings for us. And so we get people seeing the event or seeing whatever's going to be going on in the gardens a long time before, and then we push it again a month before the event so that we have a lot more people seeing it and reminding themselves that this exists. But also we make sure that there's enough events through the year or enough things going on in the gardens that really push people to come in, whether even if it's just a new product in the shop or whether it's a new flower variety, anything that's newsworthy, small or big, like for example having the Dachshund event, that's we immediately market that and it goes on to free listings. But we've also started to now do paid advertisements as well.
And how much from your public is international and how much of it is local or national, would you say, on a percentage?
So I would say that we don't really have it. We're not really in a tourist area, which is a real challenge. So a lot of our visitors are repeat visitors, people who come locally and come over and over again. So they will buy a ticket at the beginning of the season that will allow them to come in for free for the rest of the year. So we have quite a lot of those. We are, again, this is about, finally, I feel that we've got enough to tell people internationally that week that you should come and stop here. So we do have coaches that go up and down the Great North Road, the A1, and they will be maybe going to Scotland or Yorkshire, and they'll stop here on the way because we're so convenient to just stop off en route. We have this June, we have a very select group of Americans who are coming. They're going to stay for a week with us, and I will take them around to my friends' houses as well. So they'll get behind the scenes, and they're paying quite a lot of money to come and do that. And so really we're now in a very strong position to say, if there is a high-end German garden visiting company, it's really worth stopping off with us. But it has, as I was saying before, I wish I got there a bit quicker.
Brilliant. We've got a couple final questions. Do you do any joint marketing with nearby heritage houses such as Belvoir or Little Ponton?
Yes, we used to do a lot with them because we used to have a group called Hidden England, which was to try and promote, because this area is on a limestone belt. So it looks like the Cotswolds, it looks like Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, which is where everybody goes who comes to the UK. But there's not the people here because nobody knows about it. So Stamford, which is to the south of us, is the most beautiful town, and yet you won't see a coach in it. And it's just, and it's got Burley House on the doorstep. So we do, we're very open to doing joint marketing, but we don't do it as much as we used to do, simply because it took, everybody's had to sort of retrench in the last couple of years and since COVID. And so there isn't the slack in anybody's marketing team anymore to say, right, I'll organize a group with people. But these Americans who are coming are visiting 4 or 5 houses in our area while they're staying with us. So yes, we thoroughly enjoy marketing with other people. It's just the opportunity, really.
Perfect. I wondered, in terms of pricing the ticket for people to come in, how did you come to the initial price, and then how do you look at it every couple of years to see whether you're in line with other people, or how do you examine that?
So we aim to be, this is a ridiculous thing to say, but we aim to be the most expensive garden in the county. And then we say to ourselves, right, we're now going to make sure that when people pay that, they feel that they've had that money's worth. We're not, if we see the really big, Blenheim Palace, Castle Howard, Chatsworth, if they are like, they're not supermarkets because they're all beautiful, but if they're supermarkets, we're a delicatessen. That's the way we see it. So we're not after the entire country to come to our garden. We really are interested in, we have a couple of avatars of our target market, and they're people, and we have one lady called Margaret in our head, who's over 70 and a professional, and she might come with her friend or her husband, and she is a classic garden visitor. And then we have someone called Oliver, who is in his 40s, who lives with his partner in the city somewhere, and is very aspirational and wants to come somewhere that offers, something that is very Instagrammable, very beautiful. And so, so we're not saying, oh, we must do families now, we must do this, we must do that, because we're too small. The space is not big enough to do great big events, and that's something we've learned over the years.
Brilliant. I got two final questions before we finish up. One is, in terms of seed collection and keeping seed banks and that kind of stuff, do you get involved with that kind of work?
We're very committed to the Sweet Pea Society. They're very fragile sweet peas. They could easily become they could just disappear. All these varieties could disappear. And so it's really important that there are still people in the country growing them every year. Sorry. Hey. And so we are yes, so Sweet Pea Society is really, if we had a connection with somebody, it's with sweet pea growers in the UK.
Cool.
Tommy, I just wanted to add to the ticket pricing thing. The courtyard where all of the retail and the coffee shop is free to enter. So we make sure there's a low barrier to spending your money.
Okay. So you draw them in and then go most expensive garden in the county. That's fantastic.
Also free as well. So they have free parking, free entry, because you don't want to stop them at the start. You want them to come in, spend the money, and then go and see the gardens and kind of create that sort of pull first.
Yeah, I've seen there's a house that I know not within Ireland that has a really high parking fee. And they're wondering why it hasn't worked, that no one's coming into them. So it's a good idea to have free parking. So then final question. I mean, I can guess the answer to the first part of this, but to the second part of it, maybe. What is both of your favorite like flower or plant? But firstly, that you already have and are looking after, and then your favorite flower or plant that you'd like to see at Easton, or just admire from as a flower or plant that just wouldn't suit Easton.
I would love to get magnolias growing here. That it is possible, I think, but we'd have to improve the soil a lot. And I think once they were established, they would grow, but they don't naturally want to grow here. But I have seen them in the area, so I know that is possible. And I'd love to get some magnolias going here. That would be a joy to see in the spring. Yeah.
My favorite are currently the Californian poppies. They have the most they're very small, very buttery, but they just are the most beautiful, colorful flowers. And we have poppies all through the gardens, which I absolutely adore. But the flower that I wish could grow, and sadly doesn't, are hydrangeas. And I love the idea of overflowing hydrangeas on every wall. We will endeavor to make sure that there is at least one of those. If they have to be in pots, so be it. But I think I think they're so romantic. And any French garden I see with overflowing hydrangeas, or even in the south, I'm always so jealous.
Brilliant. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for coming to the end of the webinar. But I just want to thank you, Izzy, thank you, Ursula, for coming and speaking about Easton, its past, its present, and its future. And thank you to European Historic Houses for and the team for helping me put on this webinar. The one thing that I would mention is
sorry, if I could just say, Thomas, because I don't want to suddenly go, just to say that if anybody would like to visit the gardens and they're around, then please do get in touch with us through Thomas or through European Historic Houses. We'd be delighted to show you around and come and see the place for yourself.
Brilliant. I've put the link to your website and to your Instagram into the chat, which hopefully works there. Yep. The one thing I will mention is that we are We have opened nominations for the European Young Heritage Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Those close on March 13th. So if you have a garden, if you don't have a garden but you have a different project as a Next Generation member that you're really, really proud of, I came second last year with a pond restoration. Monty came third with with the Easton supply shop. It was a really, really good. It's a really good prize, and it's a really, really good way of raising awareness for the Next Generation, who are doing lots of things in their houses, even if they're not running them. So nominations close on March 13th. But yeah, thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you to European Historic Houses. And any questions, feel free to get in contact with any of us. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone.